All right, good morning, everybody. It is time to get started. I am so excited that you're all joining us today. My name is Jennifer Morse. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at MadCap Software, and I'm also so thrilled to be joined by my colleague, Jorgeo Catolico. He's our Customer Success Manager here at MadCap Software, and it is release time, which is such a fun time. And so today we have a lot to cover. We're going to talk about all of the releases that we just came out with, which includes MadCap Flare 2020 and the MadCap Central May 2020 release. So that's why we're here, and we are so excited. So before we jump in, since we have a lot to cover today, we have a few folks funneling in still, so I just want to review a couple of quick items of business before we start. Of course, this webinar will be recorded, and we'll send a link to everybody that registered, so not to worry if you have to leave a little bit early. And we actually allocated a little bit more time for this webinar. So again, we understand we have folks all over the world joining. So don't worry if you have to leave early, we'll send you that link. Also, there is a question panel in the GoToWebinar console. So we would encourage you to use that place to ask questions as we go. We're going to do our best to get to these questions today, but whatever we don't get to live, we will follow up with a question and answer document for everybody that registered today. So not to worry if we didn't get to it, but we're going to do our best to get to everything. So as I mentioned, we have a lot to cover. So real quick, high level, I just want to review today's agenda. Lot to talk about. The first thing we're going to cover today is the collapse and expand tags in the XML editor. The next thing we're going to talk about, the code snippet editor. It's a crowd favorite. We can't wait to show this to you. It's so cool. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the find and replace elements enhancements that we made to the Flare interface in Flare 2020. And then we're going to talk about MadCap Connect for ServiceNow. So ServiceNow is a very popular IT service management platform that's used by lots of MadCap customers. And so we have a new plugin that makes it easy to take your Flare topics, your single sourced content, and port it over automatically to ServiceNow knowledge bases. Then we're going to talk about the enhancements to micro content, which is really cool. And that's going to sort of wrap up the Flare side of things. And then we're going to turn our attention to MadCap Central, and we're going to review the new features in the Central May 2020 release, which includes the new private output feature, which is great. So users will have to log in to see our output. The new sites page, which I think you'll find really helpful if you're using Central, and we'll touch on the new viewer role and what that's all about. So as you can see, we have so much to cover today. We are so excited. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Gio, who's going to get started.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, there's lots of new useful features in this release that we're all excited about. So to kick off what's new in MadCap Flare 2020, authors now have the option to collapse or expand tags in the XML editor. Authors could easily use arrows, the context menu, or shortcuts to collapse and expand virtually any block level content. This could make it easier to view, manage, and find content in those longer topics in your project. And authors have the choice to enable or disable this functionality in the XML editor. So let's check this out in Flare. So we wanted to have a little fun with this, so we did make our project Star Wars themed. But as you can see here on my topic, I have quite a bit of content on this page. On this topic, I have multiple headings, I have a table, I have a couple diagrams, and I have some more text. So navigating in this topic, it could be a little cumbersome with all the content that we have here on this page. Now, something that you will notice in Flare 2020 are these little indicators next to our elements that let me know that I could collapse our tags. So let's see what happens when I select this arrow that's above our heading. You'll see that everything is collapsed below this heading until the next equal heading. In this example, we collapsed the heading 2, so all of the content under our heading 2 until the next heading 2 will be collapsed. Now there's a couple ways that we could collapse our tags. One way is to use the arrow like we just did. Another way is we could use the structure bars. So I could right click on this H2 tag in the structure bar, and then I could select collapse to collapse my content. For those that use keyboard shortcuts, we could collapse our tags by selecting Alt-Shift-C. So I'll select collapse. And we could even right click on the content itself and then select collapse to collapse our tags. Now, when our content is collapsed, this doesn't affect the output or the source code, so we don't see any special XML or our content collapse if we go into the text editor or if we preview our topic. But now that we have our content collapse, this also makes it easy to organize and move groups around of our content in our topic, so we could organize them. And we could conveniently scan our long document since everything is now sectioned out. Now there's a couple ways that we could expand our tags. So this ellipses button here is an indicator that lets us know that our content is collapsed. So to expand our content, we can double click the ellipses. We could select this arrow, or we could right click on our structure bar and we could select expand, or we could use the keyboard shortcut again. Now we could also use these buttons in the XML toolbar to expand our content. So I'm going to expand our content using this button here in the toolbar. Now, a good use of the toolbar buttons is that it expands or collapses all the content on our page. So it might be helpful to collapse everything in our topic and then progressively move down and show information on our topic as we author. With everything collapsed, I could then expand every layer one by one. So let's say I want to expand this heading to see this section. I can double click this ellipses button to check this out. And then as you could see, we're progressively moving down the layers of this topic to make it easier for you to search and find information on the page and essentially author in a less crowded environment. Now, if you don't want the collapse tag arrows to appear next to our elements, you could also disable them and turn them on or off by selecting this button down here at the bottom. And then if we hide them, you will notice that there's a little extra space in between our text and the structure bar. Now, although we hid the arrows, that doesn't mean that we disabled and we can't use the ability to collapse our tags. We could still use the structure bar or our keyboard shortcut to collapse the tags if we want. Now I'm very excited for this next feature, and I think you all will really like this one. For those authors that need to document code or create API documentation, we added a code snippet editor. You could quickly and easily insert code snippets in dozens of languages. The syntax is automatically highlighted according to the selected language. Now, highlighting text and adding color to text was possible with customization in your CSS style sheets, but now you don't have to be a CSS whiz to prettify your code snippets. And in HTML5 outputs, your readers can click a copy button and then paste the code elsewhere if needed. Plus, the code snippets transform beautifully in print outputs too. So let's have a look at how easy this is to manage in Flare 2020. So let me close out of this topic. And so we're back in Flare, and if we select the insert ribbon, you'll see that there's a new code snippet option too. So we could select this, and this will open up the code snippet editor. So we could copy and paste our code into the editor. Then we could, on the right side, we could then add a caption. So I'll caption this JavaScript code. After we create our caption, we have the option to place the caption above the code or below it. So I'll choose above for this example. For our print-based outputs, we also have the option to have the caption repeat in case we have long code snippets that span across multiple pages or encounter a page break in our PDFs or Word documents. So we can have the caption appear on the next page with our code by selecting repeat. So I'll select that. Next, we could select our language so that Flare knows how to syntax highlight our code. Now, if the language for your code isn't on this list that includes about 36 languages, we recommend choosing the closest one. But my language is here, so I'll select JavaScript. We could also have line numbers appear alongside our code. And then we could enter a starting number. So I'm going to have this start at 1, but we could have it start at a different number if we want. And if we have multiple code snippets on the page, we also have a continuous button for our line numbers. But I'm going to come back to this continuous option in just a moment. So let's select OK. And then my code snippet is inserted into the editor. And we could see my caption above my code. We could see the line snippets next to our code and this integrated copy button over here on the right. So let's take a look at our preview so we can see how this looks like. And in HTML5 output, our code looks great. All the syntax is highlighted. We have our line numbers, we have our caption, and we have the copy button so that we could paste this code elsewhere if needed. And if you want to see how this looks in PDF output, we could also preview it there as well. And as you can see, it translates over for print-based outputs too. Now you may also need to insert an additional code snippet in our topic. So we could go back into our XML editor, and let's say under the supporting text, we wanted to insert our code snippet. So we'll go back into our insert ribbon, and then we'll select code snippet. And then we'll copy and paste our code in again. I'll select the language so it could highlight my code. And then I want my line numbers to appear again. But I also want my line numbers to be continuous because this code snippet is actually a continuation from my first code snippet. And we just wanted some supporting text or even an image in between our code. So I could select continuous. And you'll see when this is inserted, after I select OK, that the line numbers continue from the first code snippet. So my first code snippet ends on 13, and the line numbers for my second code snippet starts on 14. We could also edit any existing code snippets, and we could style them using our CSS style sheet. As you could see here, my MadCap code snippets are wrapped in MadCap code snippet XML. So we could change how this looks in a variety of ways. I created a custom code snippet style class beforehand, so I could apply our style, and we could see how this looks. So I was able to add some borders, I was able to change the background color, I was even able to edit the width of our snippet, and I was able to add some padding. So there's tons of ways that we could style our code. Now we don't have to use pre-tags or JavaScript to get this code to look nice for both of our web and print outputs. Now moving on to the next feature. In Flare 2020, we made major enhancements to the Find and Replace feature, including a new Find and Replace in Files window, which has both Find Text and Find Elements in the same pane. The new Find Elements tab not only makes it easier to find particular elements like custom tags, MadCap specific features like drop-down text and concepts, but also things like markup, inline styles, and style classes. Then you could easily take action on these elements using the replace action fields without having to know complex regular expressions. And a new create backup option was also added to both the find text and find elements tabs. So let's take a look at these new enhancements in Flare 2020. I'll close out of this topic. And in Flare 2020, if I go into the home ribbon, I'll hit the find and replace button. You'll notice that there's actually, in addition to the Find Text tab, there's also a Find Elements option too. Now, we had this option in previous versions, but this was in the Home ribbon rather than being in the Find and Replace pane. Also, although we had the option to find elements, you couldn't actually take action on any of those elements immediately after you found them. Now, in this topic, I have several H3 elements. But now let's say I want to turn all of my H3s into my H2s. And we want to actually do this on this topic and throughout my whole project as well. Now, this wasn't something that we couldn't do before in the Find and Replace pane, but this required knowledge of regular expressions. Now we could do this quickly in the Find Elements tab using this user interface. So here under the Find, we can look for a number of things like tags, classes, style IDs, inline formatting, and attributes. But since we want to replace the H3 tag, I'll make sure tag is selected, and then I'll put H3 in here. Then I could select a replace action. So again, lots of options for us here. In this example, I'm going to select the set tag option, and then we'll replace that H3 with an H2. So I'll put H2 in here. This preview will show us what's going to happen to our elements based on the actions that we selected. So I know this is a little small, but there is a slashed out H3 here that lets us know that we're removing the H3 and we're replacing it with an H2. We could apply this through our whole project, or we could just do this in selected areas. I could also select which file types I would like to take action on. So we could do this on all supported file types, or we could do this on just topics, on just snippets, on just micro content files, or in just our master pages. But since I want to do this throughout my whole project, I'll select all supported files. And we also understand that doing a find and replace in the source code could be a little nerve-wracking. So there is also an option here to create a local backup for our project files when we do this find and replace. So once we have our find elements pane configured, we could select find all to find all of our H3 elements. And it found all of the H3 instances throughout my whole project. We could also toggle here, toggle the view here to view the first result for every file that it found. And then once we found all of our H3s, we could then do a replace all back in the find and replace in files pane. So I'll select replace all. And then as you could see, all of my H3s are now replaced with H2s, and that's going to happen on this topic and of course throughout my whole project as well. Also, if we go into the View tab, and if we hit that Backups button, we have a backup of all of our project files that were affected, just in case we want to restore them and revert back. Now this Find Elements pane, this is also going to be super useful if we want to clean up our topics after an import, especially for removing those pesky inline styles that sometimes come over into Flare, like inline bold tags. So we could find all instances of them after an import, and then we could use the action field to remove all of our bold tags, or we could replace them with a different style like a span.emphasis. Now moving on to the next feature. So ServiceNow is a very popular IT service management platform and is used by companies worldwide, including many MadCap software customers. In Flare 2020, we added a MadCap Connect for ServiceNow plugin that allows you to publish content directly into ServiceNow knowledge bases. If you have content that's shared in Flare and you're also using ServiceNow as a presentation layer, you don't have to worry about managing duplicate content and copy and pasting updates in separate places. You can streamline your workflow and manage content in one place and continue to use Flare as a single source. And if you want, you could also retain most of the formatting that's in your Flare topics. Now there's a couple gears in Flare to make this work. So I'll jump back into Flare and let me clean up some of these panes here. So I'll close out of these. And first, we want to create a publishing destination to tell Flare that we want to copy our files into our ServiceNow knowledge base. So I'll go into the project organizer. I'll open up my destinations folder. And then I could right click on this folder and select add destination. But I created my destination beforehand and I called this ServiceNow. So we could open this up. And then we'll select our publishing type. So when you install Flare 2020, you will notice that all the MadCap connector plugins are also going to be installed. So you want to make sure to select the MadCap Connect for ServiceNow as the publishing destination type. And then you could activate the connector using your MadCap Connect for ServiceNow license key, or you could use a 30-day free trial. I activated mine using a license key. And then we're going to log in. So I'll select this login credentials button. And then in this window, you'll insert your instance of ServiceNow, and then you'll insert your client ID and client secret. Now you may be wondering, how do you obtain this client ID and client secret? Well, before you use this integration, a ServiceNow system administrator must log into ServiceNow Service Management and create a new entry in the ServiceNow application registry. This one-time step allows you to retrieve the client's ID and client secret that you will need when you are setting up this integration in Flare. I'm sure for a ServiceNow admin, those steps probably make a lot more sense. But once we obtain the client's ID and client secret, we'll put them into these fields, and then we'll select next, and then we'll go ahead and log in with our credentials. Oops. And there's also a handy tooltip here that lets you know all the required permissions in ServiceNow, just in case you do have some trouble publishing. But I'll select Finish to log in. And then after we logged in, we could then configure the options in our publishing destination. So we're going to use all the default publishing destination options here, but what is going to be required in this destination is for us to select a default knowledge base. So I'll select that. And then we also have to select a default category as well. So I'll select my category. Let me call this category. And these are going to be configured in ServiceNow. And we have to select a default knowledge base and default category because this is where topics that don't have a knowledge base or category defined will be directed to when published into ServiceNow. We could also publish into different workflows. So we could publish into drafts, we could publish into reviews, or if we know that our topics are ready to go into our live ServiceNow knowledge base, we could send them straight into publish, but I'll send mine into drafts. For our concept and keywords that we set up in Flare, we have some options to use those to generate keywords, and we could generate tags in ServiceNow. And when we publish, we also have the option to upload only changed files. And we could even have Flare identify if there were any stale files that were previously published, but are no longer included in the files that are presently being published right now. So we could have Flare remove those files from ServiceNow when we publish. And so that's setting up the publishing destination. Now, it's also recommended to create a separate TOC in Flare that's specific for publishing in ServiceNow. I named my TOC something descriptive, so I called it SNTOC for ServiceNow TOC. So I'll open that. And it's recommended to create a separate TOC because Flare has a unique way to map topics into ServiceNow when we publish with the option to use the TOC to define the categories. So the TOC hierarchy will map into ServiceNow with the first level books becoming categories. So in this case, my categories will be dark side and light side. The second level books, these will become nested categories under the first level books. So Sith and First Order will become nested categories under my dark side category. And Jedi and Rebels will also be nested categories under my light side category. And then topics at the third level or below, these will become articles under the second level nested category. Now, after our TOC, the last gear to make this work is a clean XHTML target. So I'll head into my targets folder and I'll open up my clean XHTML target that I also called ServiceNow. And this clean XHTML file type, this will remove any of the MadCap specific code and XML, and this will produce clean XHTML files that ServiceNow can ingest. So within our target editor, let's make sure that we selected TOC that we just created. And then we could select our style sheet that we want to use when we publish. And if you want to retain the formatting when you publish this into ServiceNow, you also want to make sure that you select the option to convert style sheet styles to inline styles. So because ServiceNow does not use CSS style sheets like we do in Flare, we want to have this selected because this option converts your styles into inline styles in the output. So when we publish, we won't have to reformat our content again in ServiceNow by selecting this option. Now, another target option to keep in mind in the Advanced tab is to select Exclude Content Not Linked Directly or Indirectly from the target. By selecting this option, the only topics that will be published into ServiceNow are the topics that are linked directly or indirectly from the target and the TOC. And lastly, under the Publishing Destination tab, we want to make sure that we select our ServiceNow publishing destination that we created. And another cool thing about publishing from Flare into ServiceNow is that all of our conditions that we set up in our topics are going to be respected, and all of our variable overrides that we do in our target will work as well. Now, once we have these gears set up, we could then select publish to publish our content. Now, this publish doesn't take long, but to save us a minute, I published into ServiceNow beforehand. So let me log into ServiceNow and let me bring over my browser. And I'm in ServiceNow, and here's a grid view of all of our articles published from Flare. We could open up an article if you want, and we could even review the content in ServiceNow if needed. And here's how the content looks like when it's published into my ServiceNow knowledge base. You'll see that the top level books in my TOC, these were mapped to categories in ServiceNow, so dark side and light side. And then my second level books, these became nested categories. And then everything else below, these became articles. So I could open up an article. And in my articles, you will notice how all of our content, all of our images, and even our links are going to be preserved. So I could click on a link and that will take me to that article. Now, when your articles need to be updated, you simply go back into Flare and make your updates and then republish into ServiceNow. So a quick recap of what we covered so far. We went over collapsible tags that make it easier to view content and author in the XML editor. We went over how easy it is to insert syntax highlighted code snippets. We went over find and replace enhancements so that you could easily replace elements without having to know complex regular expressions. And we went over publishing our content using the MadCap Connect for ServiceNow. So with that, I'd like to pass it back over to Jen so that she could talk about the rest of the new features for this 2020 release.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Gio. Good job. So as Gio mentioned, we're going to turn our attention a little bit and talk about the micro content enhancements to Flare 2020. But before we dive into these specific enhancements to micro content, I just want to review very, very quickly, what is micro content and why is it valuable? Well, micro content in its simplest definition, it can be text, it can be images, it can be video that can be consumed by a reader in about 10 to 20 seconds. Okay, so quick little bits of content. And it's becoming really important for technical communicators and content developers because so many consumers of content today expect short, concise, relevant answers to questions they may have about a particular product of yours or a particular service. So the idea with micro content is that we want it to capture a reader's attention and answer their question or a need very quickly. Oftentimes we may want to provide links to additional information, maybe a list of search results or links to other sites. So micro content needs to be precise. And when we think about creating it, we also want to be able to stick to the reuse concepts that we all know and love in Flare. So how can you recognize it? Well, MadCap didn't invent micro content, it's been around. But we see micro content all the time when we use something like Google. I mean, when was the last time you used Google? Probably 2 minutes before you joined this webinar. When you do a search, you often see these directed short bits of content that can answer your query very quickly, in addition to the hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of results that you're used to seeing. So I just did a quick search. How do you start using MadCap Flare? We got this little rich media video here that we can play, plus 319,000 links that I can sift through as well. But I could watch this quick little video and it'll help me out. So that's an example of micro content. So using micro content in your content management approach can greatly increase the usability of the information that you provide to your end users. Here's an example of micro content that can be seen in Flare's documentation. In this example, and in fact, you could all do this now. You go to Flare's help. If you search for this keyword here, HTML5, that yielded 320 search results. But we can also see this concise curated response that appears first with text, some other rich content that can be read quickly, and links to other long form content. So We use it extensively in our own documentation to increase the usability of everything in here and make that search experience very targeted and helpful. So micro content's really the backbone for lots of things that we see and interact with now, and that we will continue to see as this technology continues to evolve. Now you'll see at the very top of this diagram, we can see that micro content that's created in a Flare project, well, it starts with phrases that link to corresponding responses. Those responses can be leveraged from your existing topics and snippets, which ensures maximum content reuse, which is what we want to do, right, when we're working day to day. Or you can also author those responses directly in the micro content editor. It kind of looks and feels like the regular XML editor, so you have a choice there. So here's an example. Oh, sorry, I went ahead. I want to just point out this. I highlighted these boxes here. So out of the box, micro content can easily turn into a featured search result. Okay, so that's what we just saw in the Flare help. That's out of the box. And with Flare 2020, context-sensitive help identifiers, or CSH IDs, as we sometimes call them, well, they can now be associated with those micro content phrases, making micro content ideal for supporting field level or embedded help within an application. And what does that look like? Well, took a screenshot. This is, here's an example of what field level or embedded help could potentially look like. So this is MadCap Central, which is a web app. And we can see that if you click that little question mark there, this little bit of micro content, not the entire topic that explains the procedure on what to do here for the bulk invite, but just these 4 quick steps, leveraged from perhaps a longer form procedure, which is accessible if you click that link or search for it in the documentation. So we extracted these 4 little things from this longer form topic and embedded it as a little bit of field help there. So that's another example of how we can use micro content contextually like that. So as you can see from this diagram, just kind of real quick, finishing up here, there is potential to use micro content for other things as well. Maybe FAQ databases. Perhaps you want to leverage your micro content and feed it into chatbots. Maybe you want to use it in VR and AR instructions. So it's not necessarily out of the box with Flare yet. As we can see, this little asterisk we point out, may require some third-party applications or some developer assistance, but it's absolutely possible. And as micro content continues to evolve, I suspect this diagram is going to change in terms of what Flare will create out of the box, especially as standards around these things like chatbots and VR and AR, especially as standards are starting to develop with those. So again, I suspect this will change. Now, Flare 2020. Okay, it brings a number of enhancements to this notion of micro content authoring and management, including the ability to apply conditions to micro content phrases so that at a target level, you can separate the phrases to be included in different outputs. Also, we've added support for what are called micro content conditions and micro content variables so that you can show or hide linked content from phrases. Meaning I may have a phrase and I may link the response to an existing topic or snippet in my project. So we can control what shows up in the featured result versus what shows up when we access the entire file. So similar to snippet conditions and snippet variables, but it's for micro content only. You can also control the variable definition too, and we'll take a look at that. We also, as mentioned, we have the ability now to associate context-sensitive help identifiers, or CSH IDs, as some of you may call them, with those micro content phrases. Before we could only associate them with topics. So this makes that ideal for that field level or embedded help within an application. And the last thing I'll review is access to the phrase properties for each micro content phrase, which is also new. So that's what we're going to talk about. So let me go ahead and put PowerPoint away, and we'll bring up Flare and take a look at some of these. All right, so here I am in my Flare project. I first want to talk about the concept of conditions on phrases. So I'm in my micro content file right now, and in my micro content file, I've got 3 main phrases here: Millennium Falcon, notable films. I've got something here called what is micro content, which is just the default one that you get when you add a micro content file to your project. So we'll just use this to play. I created these 2 phrases. I happen to be running analytics on this particular project to understand what people are searching on. Output Analytics in Central is a great way to begin thinking about building your micro content phrases, because you don't have to guess what people are searching on. It's a perfect list of phrases and alternate phrases that you can create to support the needs and queries of your users. So I just started, I saw a lot of search terms like this, so I created some micro content phrases to support that. And so micro content, again, we want to talk a little bit about the conditions on phrases. So what does that mean? Well, in my project, you can see I've got two different targets here. I've got a knowledge base A and I have knowledge base B. I also have some conditional text here. I've got some tags I've created for knowledge base A and knowledge base B, because I may have content in my project that I need to include or exclude for a particular output. So what I did is this particular phrase, you can notice here, I've got this little blue tag that's representing this KBB tag. So if I right click on this phrase and I pull up the properties, I can see that I've got this conditional text tab. So I can apply that special tag to that phrase. So I'm basically saying, hey, this phrase, this only applies to knowledge base B. Okay, when we generate our target for knowledge base A, I don't want that to show up at all. So we can control what phrases actually show up as a featured result. So I have my conditional text applied to that particular phrase. Okay, and so there's that little blue box colored in to let me know that there's a conditional marker on this entire phrase. And if we take a look at our knowledge base A target, I'll toggle over here, we can see on my conditional text tab, I'm telling the target file to exclude that knowledge base B tag, because I don't want that stuff showing up when we generate for knowledge base A. I do want it to show up when we generate for knowledge base B. So what does that look like? Well, I already went ahead and saved 30 seconds and I built this. So let me go ahead and show you here. So here's my output for knowledge base A. Okay, I have a little indicator here to remind me because they look the same. If I search for micro content, we don't see anything, because we told the target, hey, remove that phrase entirely. I don't want it to show up. But what is the experience in knowledge base B? Let me go ahead and toggle to that one. We'll search again. And we do see it show up because we didn't exclude that condition tag from the target. So we would expect to see that phrase show up as a featured search in our featured search results. So again, that's conditions on phrases controlling what phrases show up at the target level. All right, so let's go back to Flare. What about micro content conditions? What's that all about? Well, let's go back to our micro content phrase. So micro content conditions allow us to control what actually shows up in the featured search versus what shows up if we were to look at the entire topic. Because remember, micro content's supposed to be small, but we want to leverage as much of our existing content as possible, whenever possible. So let's break this down and take a look at this example. So I have two phrases, my two other phrases here, notable films, Millennium Falcon. Okay, so what I did is I took these phrases and the alternate phrases and I linked it to these existing topics. I didn't want to rewrite it. I didn't want to have to, type it here in the editor. I already have that content that I'm maintaining as a single file, so I want to reuse that as much as possible. So I linked the phrase to this existing topic here. And when I do that, we can see the topic actually loads, and it tells us I can't edit this because it's linking to a topic or snippet. The whole response is linking to that entire list of films topic. But again, if we take a look, it's kind of long, right? But micro content, it's supposed to be small. So what I can do is I applied an additional conditional tag to this topic, and we can see, well, what's going on here? What's this purple business? Well, this is another tag that I created. So I'll look over here. So in my conditional text tab, you can see I created a separate conditional tag set, and I called it micro content conditions. Now you don't have to do this in order to support this, but I created a separate tag set just to kind of keep things organized. If you want to put all of your conditional tags into one top level tag set, you can do that. But for me, I just separated it out to keep it separate. So I created a topic only condition, and we can see that that purple tag applied to the content that I only want to show up if we were to look at the full topic. So same thing with Millennium Falcon. Let's take a look. We can see I applied some text here and I've got this untagged. If we scroll down, I've got this untagged. So what I'm able to do is by applying this condition, I can really control that curated response. So how do we put it in action? Well, with my topic linked to my phrase, my condition tag applied to my source topic, let's go ahead and bring up the properties of this phrase again. We'll do notable films first. This phrase properties here is new, so let's pull this up. And because I have a linked response, I have access to this micro content conditions tag. And when I select this tab, I can see all of my conditional tag sets here. But remember, I kept a separate one, so I have that selected. There's that topic only tag. Right now, there's no action set on it. But I want to exclude that tag from my featured result for search. So I'm going to say exclude and watch what happens to my response when I click OK. Oops, we got to save. Sorry. Let's try that again. So I saved, and we can see that that response changed. So it didn't have everything in the full topic. It just has that little bit of stuff. Well, what's going on here with this variable? Well, I mentioned we can do micro content conditions and micro content variables. So in my source topic, I have a variable here, and we can control the definition of the variable in the response too. Let me bring up the properties one more time and we'll have a look. So here we are, micro content conditions. I excluded that. But for micro content variables, let me go ahead and select this. So this is looking at my variable set for my project. We can see we have a variable here called name. I just kept it simple. And we've got two definitions for it. So the topic definition, the project level definition is trilogy. But what I've done is I've toggled that variable definition to say movies. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And we can see that says movies. Now in the full topic, we'll see this in a second, it's going to say trilogies. So we can even control the definition and that featured search result too. So I'll go ahead and click save. Let's take a look at Millennium Falcon. Let's do the same thing. Again, long topic. I've got some tags applied. If I were to bring up the properties of this phrase, okay, there's my micro content conditions. I don't have that tag applied yet, so I'm going to set it to exclude. And again, watch how my response changes a bit. We just have that information. So this is that curated response that we're going to see. So what does this look like in practice? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the output. So here we are. So if I search for films, let's say, there's that special curated response. So it looks very different. If we were to access this topic, though, from this link, or perhaps the table of contents, or from the list of search results, we can see the entire topic display. So again, we're leveraging our single file, but we're really controlling that response that we get in search. What about the Millennium Falcon? What if I search for something like blueprints? So there's my little curated result. This is micro. But if we click on the topic from this link, or perhaps the table of contents, we get the full topic. So we can control that search experience using micro content conditions and micro content variables. Oh, I didn't point out the variable. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll see. I didn't make a note of that. So here we can see it says movie, right? Because we defined it to be, we chose movie for the search results. But if we click on films, we can see that it says trilogy. So we have way more granular control in terms of what gets compiled and passed through with micro content conditions and variables. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is the new alias editor and how that's been modified, allowing you to set context-sensitive help identifiers, again, which I've mentioned, we also sometimes call those CSH IDs on micro content phrases. So I actually have an alias file. We'll take a look at this. Okay, so here's our alias editor. Now, micro content, again, it's intended to be short bits of content. So this makes it ideal for field level embedded help within an application. And I showed you a little screenshot of that just as a quick example. So what I'm going to do, I have a couple identifiers here. Your identifiers might look a little bit different. I'm just showing this for demo purposes. But what we can do is we can assign not only topics, which was only available up until 2020, We could assign topics to those identifiers, but now we can assign micro-content phrases to those identifiers. So I can expose my micro-content file here and I can see my phrases. So if I want to associate a phrase with films, I can just double click. We've associated the films phrase with that identifier. Let's do the same thing for the Millennium Falcon. And now there are automated ways to do this. I just wanted to show you manually so you can see how this fills out. But we can see that the file and path columns show the name of the micro-content file followed by a hash, and then that micro-content phrase ID and title. Okay, so that phrase ID and the title can be changed in the properties dialog for the phrase. So let's go back to our micro-content file quickly and take a look at those new phrase properties again. Okay, so let me go back here. And if we take a look, we'll go ahead and open up this guy. Let's take a look at those properties. So we were just here looking at the conditional text and the micro-content conditions. But let's take a look at that phrase properties dialog here. So again, each micro-content phrase has a title, and by default, it's going to be identical to the text of your main micro-content phrase right here. You might choose to edit this phrase title if you create context-sensitive help from your micro-content, and maybe you choose to display it in a browser window rather, and you want to control the text that displays in the browser tab that opens as a result. So you can change that here. It's going to grab the main one, but if you want to control what that says, you can change it right here. You can also use a variable if you want to control that phrase title. There's also an area down here at the very bottom. There's a little button. I'm sorry, there's a button here to control the variable. I already said that. I want to draw your attention down here to this searchable area. So at the very bottom here of the phrase properties dialog, this option includes, this is an option to allow you to include the micro-content in search results. So it's similar to the option in the properties dialog for topics. If you've ever seen that in a topic in the property, there's an option to include it in the search results or not. By default, micro-content phrases and responses are going to be included in the search results for your HTML5 output. But you might choose to exclude certain phrases from search. Maybe they're being used as context-sensitive help content and not appropriate as a featured snippet in search. So if you disable that option, the micro-content is going to be compiled and passed through into the output, the phrase and the content there, but searching on that phrase will not produce that featured micro-content search result like we saw in our output. It's a little bit different than the condition on the phrase. Okay, so excluding the phrase with your project condition actually removes the phrase and the associated response from the output. If we were to uncheck that box, even though we won't see that as a search result, the phrase and the response still gets compiled and passed through in the output. So it's a little bit different than the condition on the phrase. So you have that choice. Okay, so again, if we go back to PowerPoint here, because I'm going to talk about Central. Conditions on phrases, if we want to control what phrases that get generated in our output. Micro-content conditions and variables, if we want to leverage linked topics and snippets from our to our phrases, and we really want to control that curated response that shows up, particularly if we have parts of that topic that aren't necessarily connected, and we really want to maybe just have the 4 steps or a little paragraph and a little picture. We can control that now much more efficiently with micro-content conditions and variables. Those context-sensitive help identifiers can now be assigned to our micro-content phrases, and we have access to the new phrase properties to allow us to control many of these things here. All right, so that wraps up the new features in Flare. I want to turn our attention and talk about the May 2020 release of MadCap Central. So what did we do here? Well, the first thing that we're going to mention here is we now have private outputs. So your Flare outputs that you're hosting on Central can now be set to private. Users are going to have to log in to see that output. So we were always able to host output on Central. We could in 2 seconds set it to live. But now we can set it to live, but put a login in front of that to protect it and control who can get access. So this is really beneficial for authors because now they can protect output for those non-central authors to see. So maybe that includes groups of subject matter experts that you've invited,
You know, subject matter experts have always been able to see our topics pre-published. We invite them to review, but maybe we want them to see the full PDF or the full HTML5 site, see how things are looking in its entirety. Well, we can set these to be private now. It's really easy. Maybe we want to protect our output for certain groups of employees or customers. Well, we can do that now. And users without credentials won't be able to log in. So we'll take a look at that. A new sites page has been added, making it easy for authors to see a collection of information about their targets and builds from one single place. So we'll take a look at that. And then last here, there is a new free user type called a viewer, which has been added to allow users who do not use Central, like Flare authors and SMEs use Central, but again, maybe employees or certain customers, and you only want this population of viewers to view your private outputs. So we've added this new viewer role, which again, doesn't cost anything. You can have as many as you want. And their whole purpose is to view your private output. So we're going to put this away. I'm going to pull up Central here. One thing I want to point out is that teams play a really important role in Central now when it comes to private output. Now, I didn't include teams in this bulleted list because Central's always had teams available, and we used it as a way to perhaps group Central authors and SMEs together. But now, in order to view secure content, SMEs and viewers, they need to be grouped into teams. And those teams are then associated with your private sites. So although I've always had them, they're really important now if we want to support this private output. So let me put PowerPoint away, and we'll go ahead and pull up Central, and we'll take a look at some of these fun things. Okay. So here we are. So here I am in my Central license. Now, one of the first things you'll notice if you've launched it in the last few days is this new sites page. So let's start with that. So sites, okay, let me expand one of these here so we can see. Sites are a collection of information about a Flare output and its destination. So after you build your targets, you may want to make them available for people to access, and that's what a site is. So it includes the URL. It tells us whether it's set to live or maybe it's not. Maybe it's only available to authors at this point. Is it set to live? And is it set to private? So we can see little bits of information about this particular site. Now you still build your targets in Central from the projects page over here. Okay, so we still build them here. But once targets are built, the sites page is where you manage all of those builds from all of your projects in one single place. Okay, so that's the difference between, it looks kind of like the builds pane. We'll still build over here in the projects area. We build them, and then we can think about creating these sites to manage them here. So we'll take a look at this in a little bit more detail, but I want to point out this, these tabs up here. So URLs, what's this all about? Well, when you're in the sites page, this URL tab is available to you. And the URLs page lets you create and manage all of the domains for your Central license. So previously, you could only have one domain for your license, but with the introduction of sites now, you can have as many as you want, and you can control which projects, targets, and builds use the domain that you want. Now, a host map domain is now set on the sites page instead of on the license setting dialog, which I think is a little bit easier to find and manage. So I'm just using the default URL here out of the box, but if we wanted to add a different host map domain, we could click the plus button and follow the procedure to add a host map domain. Maybe you want the URLs to say, you know, docs.mycompany.com, for example. You don't want that MadCap Central vanity URL. You can change that here. We put it on the sites page. It used to be kind of buried here in your name into the license settings. So putting it here on the sites page, which is where we manage it, is a little bit easier to find. Let's talk about this themes tab. This is kind of fun. Themes let you control how different interface elements look for each of your private sites, like 404 pages, login fields, forgot my password fields. Now, you may want to have just one theme for all of your sites, or you can create multiple themes if you want, because maybe you have different product outputs with different color schemes, or you need to support different departments or different customers. So you can do that too. Now, if you don't create a theme, because you don't have to, but if you don't, the default theme provided by Central will show up. And it's just kind of a plain, it's white with some green text. So you don't have to use one, but it is kind of fun to create your own to give that branded experience for your viewers. So I created a couple themes here. And by the way, it's very easy to create a theme. Click the plus button. Common theme in Central is that plus button when we want to do something new. We give it a name, and then we click save. So I went ahead and did that, and I'll show you what I did. So once you add the theme, it'll show up here in this list, and then you can start customizing it. So let me show you one that I made. I called it MadCap Corp, and what I did is I got all of the appropriate fonts and hex values from our marketing department to create this appropriate login, right? Because I have some employees that I want to onboard onto Central here as viewers, and when they access my private sites, I want them to have this sort of branded experience. So I changed a couple things. I gave it one of our official logos. One of our official font families is Roboto, so I just edited it here. I was able to change some of the card colors, so that's this guy back here in the background. If we look at the card color here, I put the hex value in for 1, for background 2. You can adjust the gradient if you want. Again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder with this stuff. So I just, played with a few things. We can adjust, we can see that gradient changing a little bit. So if anybody's loves doing design stuff, I think you'll really enjoy this. The card text can be changed. So many little stylistic elements can be changed about these things. So I went ahead and did some of this. Now what's cool is we have all these different pages here. If you set the colors and the background and everything here on the first one, those changes do stick on all of these different little pages. So you don't have to necessarily change it. It'll sort of cascade. If you want to, you can. But if you want it to be the same across the board, you just kind of set it here once and it'll be used on every single page here. So that's one that I created. You can even toggle, by the way, down here, we can toggle, this is if we were to see a pop-up, we can toggle the background, the color, so many options. We have a little loader. We can see I changed the loader color to that MadCap blue. So again, have fun with it. You can really create these branded experiences. Here's another one, just so you can see it's a little different. So here's another one, different logos, slightly different background, different gradient. So again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. You can create these different ones. So my themes are created. Now, let's take a closer look at those sites and kind of break those down a little bit. Let me go back to the sites page. So I already have a couple sites here on my license, but what if we want to create a new one? Let's just walk through some of the basics of that quickly. Well, just like adding a new theme, we can add that. Here's add a new site. There's that plus button. Okay, so we'll add a new site here. Now, you want to fill out some of these elements. Now, the name is important. It's totally up to you what you call this site. But since the site is made up of a project and a target and a build, maybe you want to think about giving it a name, maybe a combination of those things, like the project name, maybe the target name, or maybe a build vanity, which you can add to the output URL. Maybe you want it to be, certain manual V1 or V2 or whatever. You can do that. That way you can easily distinguish the site from the others on your list at a glance. You'll still see more details about it, but it's just to kind of, when you first come to this site page, think about giving it a name that's descriptive. So maybe I'll just choose, do something here. I'll call this Balboa. That's the name of my project. And maybe HTML5. And maybe we'll say V1 or something like that. So give it some sort of descriptive name. We'll choose our domain. Now, if you had more than one domain, you could choose it here. I only have the one. If we want to give this a vanity, we can. We can call this V1 if we want, or V2, whatever we want to do. We'll go ahead and choose a site theme if we're going to set this to private. So I'll go ahead and choose MadCap Corp here. And here's where we tell the site, okay, what project, target, and build do we want to use? So we'll go ahead and expand this. I'll choose a project. Okay, so I'll choose Balboa, there it is. I'll choose a target, and then I can choose the build. So all of the builds for this target show up here, or we can use the latest build, okay? Now here's where we have some fun choices. We can set this, now if we just click save, that's fine. We'll just have a new row of this site and only authors will be available to view this. Do you see this URL down here? That's that private author URL, only available to the authors. If we set it to live, we see that URL change a little bit. And if we click save, this URL will be live and available for the whole world to see. We can hide it from search engines so that Google and the like don't find it, but it would be a live link. We can also set the site to private. So the URL doesn't change, but now if anybody got their hands on this URL, they won't have access to it. They're going to have to authenticate in order to view that output. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click save. Oh, by the way, before I do, remember I mentioned, we'll talk about Teams a few different ways, but on this Teams tab, since we're setting this site to private, users have to be associated with teams, which are then associated with private sites. So here's where I can tell that site, which groups of users do I want to have access to this particular site? So maybe I want to make this SME team, because I've grouped them together into a team, all of those users on my license that are helping me review my content pre-publish. Well, I'll group those I grouped them together into a team. I can associate them with this site. I also created a group or a team here called the sales team, because I'm going to onboard a bunch of folks as viewers, and I want them to have access to this site. It's proprietary information, so I only want it to be available to certain groups inside of my company. So I thought about creating a team called the sales team, and I'll be able to onboard them in just a moment, which I'll show you. And we can associate them with this team, which is already associated with this private site. So they get notified that they can log in and view it, create a password. Okay, so I'll click save. And we'll see there's my new site. It's set to live. It's set to private. And we can always edit this site and get information about it if we want to. You know, what teams are associated with it? Do we need to add additional teams to get associated with the site? So we can manage it here. Okay, so that's how we create a site. Let's take a look at this one. We can just see real quick, it's already all filled out. Let's edit the settings. So this one's live. It's set to private, but it's a completely different project. Same with this one. It's the same project, different targets, even a different output type. So we can protect any of the outputs that Central supports, online and print. So even a PDF can be protected behind a login if we want. So let's go ahead and look at the profile of this one. We can see I've got it all filled out using my special theme I created. And on my Teams tab, again, I chose SMEs and the sales team. Okay. So that's sort of the guts behind the site. It's a place for us to manage all of those builds. So let's talk about those teams real quick. I've been talking about it a couple times. So they're over here in the Teams page, and we've always had it. But this is where we want to think about grouping people together, because again, teams have to be associated with those private sites so that we can control who can get access to them. Pretty easy to create a team. There's a little plus button here. We can give it a name. We can choose, if we've already got a bunch of users onboarded to our central license, we can group those invited users already onto the team. We don't have to. You may think about creating a shell of a team just to have it there. So when you onboard a bunch of people, you can associate them with this team from the same dialogue, which is kind of nice. And then you can tell the team, okay, well, all of the private sites that I have available on my central license, what do I want to give this team access to? So I can choose one or more of our sites that are set to private here. Okay, so I did that already. And so I did that with the SME team. It's associated with those private sites that we had. But let's talk about that sales team. I've got this team created. I only have one person in here, but what if I want to bring on a bunch of folks to this central license, because I want them to have access to that private content, but they're not going to use Central like I use it. They're not going to use it like our SMEs use it. That's where this new viewer role comes into play. So let's take a look at the users and see what that's all about. So here I am on my users tab. You can see I've got a number of folks invited to my central license already. I've got authors. I've got some SMEs. We've had those for some time. Generally, authors are going to be the Flare users because they're using most of the guts of Central here. SMEs, well, they're invited to our license if they're going to be reviewing our source content in a web browser here in Central. So we've had that user role for some time. And also, we've got the new viewer role. So if we want to bring on more folks, let me just pretend, I'll pretend like I'm adding some new users here. Let's go ahead and add the new users. Pretty straightforward. First name, last name, email. You tell Central what kind of person are they going to be. Are they an author? Are they a subject matter expert? Or are we going to bring them on as a viewer? Because the only thing we want them to do is view private output. So when I select viewer, we are required to associate this new viewer with a team. That's why I like to think about creating our teams initially if we're going to be onboarding people, because that way, when we onboard them here, we can associate them with the team that we want, one or more, and then we can associate them with a particular onboarding site. Okay, because we want them to get it, they're going to get a notification, and that email will contain a link to create their password and then links to the individual private sites that they have access to. That way they can access that information. So we thought about our sites, organizing all of our builds there. Think about organizing teams of users. Even if you don't add anybody to it, just create the teams almost like a shell. Then you can onboard users, particularly these viewers that are going to be viewing private output. Now, if I click send invitation, this person that I invite is going to get an email with a link in there that will prompt them to create a password and then links to these private sites that they have access to, because they're part of this team that's associated with some private sites. Now, you can do it one by one, but we can also use this bulk invite option if we want. So we give you a little template here to make it easy, but it's basically a CSV file. It's pretty straightforward. Again, it's email, last name, first name. You can fill it out, save it as a CSV, and then wherever you saved it, just click the bulk invite, point to that CSV file, and you'll do the same thing. Instead of doing one by one, you're just onboarding a lot of viewers. You can associate those viewers with the teams here and then their onboarding site. So it's just a way to save some time. And then you'll click send invitation. Everybody that you've onboarded will then get notified that they have access to the sites, and they'll be prompted to create a password in order to see them. So 2 ways to do it. So what does this look like? What's the experience? Well, let me cancel out of this. And let's make sure. So I have Mabel Joe as a viewer here, and I believe she's associated with the sales team. Let's just make sure. Yep, there she is. So let's go ahead and go back to our sites and grab some of those private links. What would it look like if Mabel were to try and access one of those sites? So let's take a look at this sales handbook. Okay, so she's part of the sales team. Sales team's associated with this site. So I'll go ahead and open this in a new, I don't want to, the browser's going to remember me, so I'm going to try and be my alter ego here. So let me open up a new window. And I'm prompted to log in. So this particular site, remember, it's using that MadCap Corp theme. So it's got that branded look and feel that I created. I'll go ahead and put in my email here. And I'll go ahead and log in. And here's that proprietary handbook that's only available to my sales team. Okay, so we had to log in to authenticate in order to get here, and now we can search and use the content. Now for our HTML5 sites that we're hosting on Central that are set to private, you'll also notice this account link up here. This is where your viewers can log out. They can change their profile settings like their password, their username. Again, this only shows up in the HTML5 skin if we're hosting it on Central and we set that site to private. This is controlled in your skin editor and Flare in your project. So we don't manage this on the themes in Central. This is just the out-of-the-box look and feel, but the skins editor and Flare, as you know, lets you change a lot of the look and feel of your skin or your wrapper around this. So if you want a different image or verbiage there, or a hover experience, all of this can be changed in the skin editor. Tons of little stylistic dials you can change for this account link. If the site was just set to live and not to private, and we access this live link, we wouldn't see this account option. This is only for private HTML5 sites. What about that PDF? Let's try that. Let's go back here. And let me close that incognito window just to keep it tidy. What about that PDF? We're protecting that, but we need our sales folks to have access to that too. So if I'm Mabel Joe and I try to access this link, we're prompted to log in. It's using a slightly different theme. Remember, I had those two and I was able to control it. So I'll log in here. We'll give it a second. GoToWebinar's catching up, and I'll wait for it to show what I'm seeing. There we go. So here's our employee handbook. Again, protected behind that output. I didn't have to set up any additional servers or any security protocols. I can just use Central to control who can get access to my content. Okay, so let's go back to Central again. So again, sites, we think about organizing our builds across the different projects that we've got uploaded to Central. We want to think about teams now, particularly for those private outputs. We want to think about organizing all of the users on our license into teams, because those private sites, we need to put users, whether they're SMEs or viewers, authors can always see sites privately, but if we want to make them available to those SMEs that we've invited and to groups of viewers, we want to group them into teams. And then those teams are then associated with those private sites. And again, that viewer role is there, and you can have as many as you want, it's free. And the only purpose of that viewer role is to allow non-central authors to see those sites privately so that they can log in to see it. All right, so I know we have lots of great questions coming in. And so I want to turn to that. But before we do, just a little reminder for everybody. The authoring and management system, of course, has been updated with this release. So the AMS, which stands for the MadCap Authoring and Management System, this is a collection, it's an entire platform to support your entire content management and development needs. So it includes Flare, it includes Central, additional storage, all of our desktop tools here, including all of the additional plugins that we provide. So we have MadCap Connect for Salesforce for publishing to Salesforce Knowledge, MadCap Connect for Zendesk to publishing content automatically to a Zendesk guide. And now this new MadCap Connect for ServiceNow, if we want to take our content and publish it automatically to those ServiceNow knowledge bases. So if you're an AMS subscriber, you're going to get that ServiceNow plugin free. It's part of your subscription. If you're not an AMS subscriber, maybe you subscribe to Flare and Central separately, that's okay. You can still try MadCap Connect for ServiceNow. In fact, any of these plugins for 30 days. It comes with Flare as a trial, so you can activate it right within your Flare 2020 build. And you can always purchase the subscription to those connectors separately, depending on your needs. So again, it comes free with AMS, but it is available to subscribe to separately if you don't subscribe to AMS. Now, you can always start a free trial. This will be a clickable link, or you can visit our website. Of course, you can sign up and try all of these things. So if you have any questions, get in touch with us or feel free to sign up. The other thing I want to mention real quick before we get to some questions is we do have a promotion running right now where we can get 3 extra months added to new subscriptions for Flare, Central, or AMS if you want to subscribe to the entire platform. Plus, new users have access to our introductory training at no cost with the purchase. So again, this is going to be a clickable link, but you can get access to this information on our website too if you wanted to go there now. But I would encourage you to check out the introductory training. We offer it a few times a month, and it's a great way to understand the basics of Flare and get up and running quickly. And then with the promotion, it's a great way for onboarding. You're essentially getting 15 months for the price of 12, which is kind of nice. So it's a great way to get onboarded and work with us. If you have any questions about any of this, in terms of the promotion or the training or what AMS is, please get in touch with sales@madcapsoftware.com or feel free to reach out to your individual rep, and we'd be happy to help. Okay, well, we are come to the end of sort of the live demo portion. I'm looking at the time. It looks like we're doing well. I'm going to go ahead and, Gio, we're going to take some questions now because we have so many, which is kind of fun. Let me switch my slide here. Oh boy, you guys have some great questions. So I don't know if we'll be able to get to them all, but let's have a look. I'm looking for some ones. Sometimes there are duplicates that look very similar, so I want to choose some ones. So, oh, great question. Is the collapse and expand feature only applicable to heading tags? You want to take that one, Gio?
Yes. So this feature, although during the demonstration, I only showed this on heading tags, but you could use this feature for any block level content. So this could be applied to paragraphs, tables, snippet blocks, etc. Great question.
Yeah. So, okay, so there's some questions about the code snippet editor here.
Oh, here's a good one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you add a custom user-defined language in the code snippet editor? Yeah, that's a great question. So user-defined languages are currently not supported, but if you do have any languages, if you do have a language that does not appear there, make sure you submit it as a feature suggestion so that we could get that in there in a later version.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's another good question. In the code editor, there's a default setting. Where is that default defined? You want to take that one, Gio?
Yeah, so the default setting for the code editor means that it will inherit the language setting that might be set elsewhere, such as in the style sheet. This prevents any inline setting for the language in the topic file.
Good question. I thought this was a good question too. Do you have to give the code snippet a caption? I know you demoed that, and no, actually you don't. That caption's completely optional and totally up to you. So that was a good question. A couple questions about that repeat option, Gio. So I'll kind of summarize here because I'm seeing this in a few places. Can you re-explain the purpose of the repeat option for the caption? What is that for?
Yeah, so the repeat option is for print-based outputs. In case you do have a long code snippet that spans across multiple pages, or if your code snippet encounters a page break, that repeat option will place the caption um, on the extra page that your code snippet appears on.
Yeah, good. So great for those long snippets that are encounter those page breaks, and you want to control that caption and where it shows up. Here's a great question too. So code snippet editor, are there new CSS styles for the caption, the copy link, and the lines that you can place between the code blocks? What can you do? Well, I know you showed kind of an interesting one. You just did some quick stylistic things in your style sheet, but you can actually style many of the elements of that code snippet in the editor now. So you'll notice if you've got Flare 2020 installed and you drop in a code snippet, you can edit things like the MadCap code snippet. You'll see MadCap code snippet caption, MadCap code snippet body, and actually one special for the copy button. So all of those little elements can be styled using Flare's built-in style sheet editor, or you can code it in the text editor if you want, but they're all there in the UI for you to change and edit and style the way you want. All right. So let's take a look. There are some more great questions funneling in. Apologies, I'm looking for the ones that look to be kind of common here. So here's an interesting one. Can you find elements? We were kind of talking about the find and replace elements feature, Gio. Can you find elements with a specific condition applied? I know you did a simple H3 to H2 example, but I know that's quite a powerful feature. So can you find elements with something like a specific condition applied?
Yes, you can. So earlier I showed, finding an H3 using the set tag option, but you could find conditions using the find attributes option there in the pane.
Very good. Yeah, in fact, I would, if you're curious about all the ways you can use that, the in Flare's online help in the what's new topic, there's some, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 really cool examples of things you may want to do using that find and replace and steps on how to do that. So, the changing inline formatting to a styled span class, for example, or like what you did, Gio, or the condition finding certain attributes. So check out that what's new topic. So there's pretty cool examples in there about how you can use it in the different ways it can be done. Because another follow-up question for that is, can I use that find and replace elements to find and replace various classes? Maybe you have p dot something and you want to change a bunch of things to p dot something else. Well, absolutely, you can use that find elements feature to do that very quickly without having to understand complex regular expressions. Okay, so let's keep looking. We got some good stuff here. I don't know if you see something, Gio, that jumps out at you.
Here's a good one. Can you highlight the main differences between micro content and snippets? Are they separate concepts or related?
Well, they're actually separate concepts. So one of the things about snippets, and in fact, I'll just give a shout out to Scott Deloach, who gave a webinar on this very thing last week. He kind of went into some of the mechanics of micro content, and that recorded webinar is on our website. So if you're curious about this, I would encourage you to pop over to our resources page, go to our recorded webinar section, you'll see it up there. But he actually talked about this. So when we create snippets, and I sort of use the word snippets interchangeably, I kind of was saying snippets as a small little bit of text. Snippets are files in our Flare project, and when we build our project, they don't actually live as separate files in our output. Well, micro content does. So when we create micro content phrases and responses, when you build your output, if you were to look at the output folder, you'll see its own directory of phrases and responses. So they get passed through as separate files in the output. So I use the word snippet interchangeably, I know, but we use the micro content specifically to help increase the searchability of our content, like I showed,
and also for applying our context-sensitive help identifiers to those individual phrases. So they sort of are, they're little snippets of content, of course, but they're not snippets like our Flare project snippets, which get built into our files. They don't become separate files in the output. So I hope that helps. Okay, so let's keep going.
Here's another good one. So some users were wondering where the content on Central is hosted. Well, Central does use Microsoft Azure to host the content in the cloud.
Right, so yeah, it's a managed service through Microsoft Azure. And so it's not sitting in a server in a closet at MadCap. It is a managed data center by Microsoft. That's a great question. So here's a question. Can you explain the viewer role again? Are they only for projects hosted on Central? Yes, the viewer role was created specifically for inviting people to view our private outputs. So they're not going to be using Central like the Flare authors or the SMEs. We only want to bring on people who can view private output, and we want to control that. So that's what the viewer role is for. Okay, let's keep going. We got lots of good questions. Go ahead, Gio, if anything jumps out at you. Oh, I have a great one here. Again, I just repeat it for everybody. Is there a limit to the viewer roles that can be added? You know, is there a number? Nope, there's no number. You can bring on any number of viewers onto your Central licenses you want, and they don't cost anything. So no limit at all. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. So in the updates to Central before, you were not able to add SMEs to a team, but now you can, correct? Was that an update? Well, we always had the teams available, and we could group authors and SMEs together, but we sort of used those teams to organize groups if we wanted to. You didn't have to, but it was just there to organize a lot of users together, like the authors and the SMEs that we were inviting. Maybe we wanted to quickly associate a bunch of projects with some authors, maybe communicate with them using Central. So that's kind of the purpose of the teams. But now with this private output, teams are really important, because they play a huge role in controlling who can get access to those private sites. So while we had it before, we want to think about using teams now to organize what groups of users or teams can get access to those private sites. I hope that made sense.
Here's another good one. If a project is set to live and not searchable by Google, would it be searchable using another search engine? So there is an option to hide the live output from all search engines, including Google and, of course, any other search engine out there.
Yeah. Oh, a couple questions came up because I know we're going over the hour. Is this going to be recorded and available? Of course, as always, as I mentioned in the beginning, it is. So for anybody that has to leave early, not a problem. We'll be sending you the recording. Let's see, looking for some more good questions here, duplicate questions that people are asking, just to make some clarity here. Go ahead, Gio.
Is there a practical limit to how many users could be in a group? So there is no practical limit that we are aware of at this time. So you could add as many users to a group you want.
Here's another good question. I think maybe this came up when I was talking about the AMS and the subscription. Is a subscription to MadCap the same as a subscription to AMS? Actually, no. AMS is a subscription to Flare and Central, the desktop installed tools like Lingo for translation, Mimic, Capture, but it also includes all of the plugins too. So it's really a complete solution for authoring and publishing that's bundled together at an affordable monthly subscription price. MadCap doesn't include Central. I mean, you certainly could add on Central and any of the other plugins that you wanted. But that was a bundle that included Flare, Lingo, Mimic, and Capture. So you certainly could subscribe to Central and the other plugins a la carte. AMS is just an affordable subscription that includes everything, including a Central author. You get 2 SME seats with your AMS subscription, a lot more storage. So it ends up being a much more affordable subscription price than piecemealing all these things together. So if you have any questions about moving there, or what do you have versus AMS, always feel free to reach out to sales, and we can certainly help you with your license options too. Okay. It's a good question. We've been talking about Central and reviewing in Central. Will MadCap Contributor still be supported? So for those who are not aware, MadCap Contributor is a desktop installed tool, and it's used by subject matter experts. And that was the tool that we had prior to having web-based review in Central. So you could license Contributor for your subject matter experts and send them topics for review, and they would open it in Contributor, add their comments and their changes, and send it back to the author. And so the question was, will Contributor continue to be supported? And yes, absolutely we will. So if you have to go with a desktop installed review route, Contributor is certainly an option for you.
Here's another good one, Jen. Do you need separate credentials if you need to access multiple private sites?
I believe the answer to that is no. When you're onboarded to the Central license, you're asked to create a password, and that password will work for any of the sites that you have access to. So it's essentially that single login for all of the sites that you'll be added to as part of a team. So less passwords that you have to manage. So here's another good question. Can you upgrade from Contributor to Central or AMS? It looks like Contributor is going away. Well, Contributor is not going away, but if you wanted to upgrade to Central or AMS, you certainly can. So please reach out to us and we can help you with all of those options. Okay, a couple other questions here. Let's see. So the question, kind of a great suggestion too. We need to restrict some outputs by country. Can we use Teams to control this so that users from a particular country can only see a specific build? So at this time, just V1 of this, only viewers on a team that are associated with a team that's then associated with a private site can access that private site. So you would want to think about grouping your regional users into teams perhaps and controlling what sites they have access to. So great suggestion, maybe something we can think about in the future in terms of controlling it by regions. But at this time, it's controlled by users, which are associated with teams, which are then associated with private sites. Okay, so I'm looking for some more questions here. Great. Seeing a lot of folks that are excited about the code snippet editor. They're excited about private output. We are too. I'm looking at the time, and it looks like we're right at the end of our 90 minutes. So we're going to keep this question answer open for just a little bit longer. If you think of anything, please jot it in here. And if we don't get to your question live, as I mentioned, we're going to be answering everything that has come in and sending out a follow-up email to everybody. So with that, Gio, I want to thank you for joining me today. That was a lot of fun. I hope that you all enjoyed the presentation, and I really hope that you're excited to try and tinker with some of these new features. If you have any questions at all as you're testing and trying or curious, please feel free to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. Let us know what else do you want to see. We'd like to think we can think of everything, but we can't. So we'd love to hear your suggestions. Keep them coming. If you have anything, any feedback you want to give about the features, we'd love to hear it too. Love to hear your favorite one. Drop us a line. We'd love to know. So keep in touch with any questions. And if you have any interest in trying out Central, if you haven't done a trial yet, pop on over to our website, sign up for a free 30-day trial, and we're happy to help you on board and get it set up and everything. So don't hesitate to reach out to us and test it in your environment. So anyway, with that, I'll go ahead and thank everybody for joining. It was wonderful to spend the morning with you, and thanks again, Gio. We hope you're all staying safe out there in the world, wherever you are, and we hope to see you on another presentation soon. So thank you so much for joining today. Have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, everyone.